I can kind of identify who in the crowd might be divorced, because when I explain this strategy, there's this aha moment and their eyes light up like, wait a minute, I'm entitled to benefits. And to your question, if that is your situation and you were married 3 different times for 10 plus years to each one, you get to choose the larger of the 3, right?
Welcome to the Social Security season here on the Zacc Call Money Education channel. We are on episode 4. So in episode 3, we covered spousal benefits, and then this one will be divorced spouse benefits. This will be what happens with remarriage, survivor benefits, all the things that come with real relationships and real life, and how that creates complexity within Social Security. So stick around for this episode. We're trying to keep these short, partly because I need to make it to a soccer game for my daughter, secondarily because we need to keep it easy for you to understand and get through it all. So let's talk about the rules. So first of all, if you don't know how a standard spousal benefit works, listen to the last episode. We cover it and explain all the rules. Just the basic part of that would be that you are eligible to receive half of your spouse's benefit if you are married. And then if you are divorced or if your spouse has passed away, it's going to change all of the rules and change the amounts that you're eligible for. So let's dive into that. So Tyler, and by the way, Tyler is our expert on Social Security here. He does presentations all throughout Utah and even other states. It seems like every week you're somewhere talking to some employer about this entire concept of Social Security planning. Tyler's a partner at Capita Financial Network. I'm the president. My name is Zacc Call, and Tyler Williamson. Is there anything else we need to do before we dive right into this thing?
No, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, we're doing it. And then, of course, this is educational in nature. We're not saying everybody needs to do this exact thing with regard to Social Security. We'd love to talk to you about it. We would be happy to give you individualized planning. We do consults of Social Security, complimentary for people. We have quick ways of analyzing it, getting it right back to you. So we're happy to have one of our 18 advisors do it. This has been one of our major specialties over the last 10 to 15 years of financial planning. So diving in, divorced spouse benefits. It's the same as a regular spouse benefit as long as the marriage lasted 10 years or more. Can you add more to it, though? Because there's more to, like, how does it work with divorced situations?
Yeah, a lot of it's the same as what we discussed in the last episode in terms of, like, the percentages that you're entitled to, the ages that you're entitled to or at. One of the main or one of the key differences is you need to be unmarried still, right? So if you are divorced from somebody and you're receiving a divorced spousal benefit and you get remarried, you've got to stop taking the divorced spouse benefit off of that previous ex-spouse, okay? Another key difference is your divorced spouse does not have to be on Social Security benefits for you to be entitled. So we talked about this last episode, but if you're married and you're trying to claim a spousal benefit off of your current spouse and receive up to half of their benefit, they need to be filed. And we talked about how that may not make sense for that spouse to wait till 70, right?
That was my parents' situation. My dad had to file in order to unlock the spousal benefit. If my parents were divorced, which I'm grateful they're not,
right.
But if they were divorced, that wouldn't be the case. My mom would not need to wait for my dad to file. And I like that rule because it makes it so that ex-spouses can't hold each other hostage with regard to Social Security decisions.
Yeah. And the rule there is the divorced spouse just needs to be 62. So your ex-spouse needs to be at least 62 years old for you to be able to claim a spousal benefit off of them. And I agree. There's some angry ex-spouses out there that would on purpose delay a benefit. Even if it hurt them personally, they would delay it just to kind of dig a knife into that ex-spouse. Right. And I think the Social Security Administration cued in on that early on and said, we're going to get rid of that by just allowing them to file.
As long as the ex-spouse is at least 62 years old.
As long as your ex-spouse is at least 62, you can claim a divorced spousal benefit off them. And you have to have been married for at least a decade, right? Okay. You have to have been married for at least a decade to that prior ex-spouse to be entitled to a divorced spousal benefit. We've seen it in the past where, someone was married for 9 years and 10 months, and they were 2 months short of making it to that 10-year mark. If that's your situation and you recently got a divorce, and you're within the same calendar year, if you get remarried and finish out those last 2 months,
No way.
yeah, you could do that. It just has to be within the same calendar year. Get
Or
remarried.
the right decision in your life.
Yeah, it may not be the right decision,
right.
but you might actually come together, and that could be a bonding moment for the two of you to decide, hey, we're going to do this just so that we can be entitled to divorce spousal benefits.
Hey, if it works, I guess. There is a rule that if the divorce is more than 2 years ago, the ex-spouse doesn't need to have filed for benefits. So let's make sure I'm following this right, and you can help explain, Tyler. But let's say someone has been married for 15 years and they get divorced 6 months ago. They weren't on a benefit before, so they're trying to get a brand new spousal benefit. Do they need to wait for 2 years since the divorce, or
if they're getting remarried to somebody new?
No. So you know how that rule of like the ex-spouse benefit. See, the ex-spouse doesn't have to have filed as long as they're over 62.
Oh, got it.
I'm pretty sure that if they're within 2 years, they do have to have filed.
You're exactly right.
Right?
Yeah,
Now,
you're exactly right.
if the divorce was within 2 years. So let's say that a couple is both 63 years old and they've been married for 15 years,
Yeah.
and they get divorced. The ex can't immediately hop on a benefit. If let's say that husband files, then spouse could get on a benefit. So they are subject to each other a little bit for those first 2 years of after the divorce.
That is exactly right. And I think the easiest way to think about this is the Social Security Administration has figured out over the years how people try to scheme this, right? And they figured out that people would just get a divorce because it immediately entitled them to take a spouse.
Both of them.
They could each take a spouse off each other, exactly.
Yeah.
Which you can't do if you're married. And so I think the Social Security Administration figured that out and said, okay, we're going to put a 2-year rule in place. So if you get divorced, you've got to wait 2 years. Unless you were already entitled to be receiving it, then of course
Like if you were getting a spousal benefit
already
before you
getting
got
it,
divorced, they're not going to stop it for 2 years.
they're not going to take it away from you.
You can just
Yeah.
keep going. Okay. So let's say someone has been married 4 times to 10 for 10 years to
That
4
never
different
happens.
people. Well, I've seen it with 3 different people. So let's do that one. 3 different people. They were married for 10, 11, and 10 years to these 3 different people. How does this work for all of these exes? So they've all been married to this person for over 10 years. And let's say that this person had a $4,000 Social Security PIA, which is a pretty high one.
Yeah.
How does this work, Tyler?
This is where I see that light bulb moment in all of my presentations when I'm explaining these types of strategies. And I'm talking about divorce spousal, and I can kind of identify who in the crowd might be divorced, because when I explain this strategy, there's this aha moment and their eyes light up like, wait a minute, I'm entitled to benefits. And to your question, if that is your situation and you were married 3 different times for 10 plus years to each one, you get to choose the larger of the 3, right? Now you can't claim it off all 3, but you would go back and identify which spouse had the highest earnings and has the highest PIA, and you can claim your percentage, your divorce spousal percentage off of that spouse.
And if that person had been married to somebody else for 10 years as well, so it's not like who gets there first.
Yeah. Right?
Both can take a spousal benefit off of that record.
Yeah. So if your ex-spouse is remarried, the thought might be, well, now I'm the divorced spouse. I can't get it off my ex-spouse because they're now remarried and their current spouse is getting a spousal benefit. That's not the case, right? If that ex-spouse has a new spouse, that current spouse can get a spousal, and you as well as the divorced spouse can also get a spousal off of your ex-spouse. So multiple people can be claiming off of that spouse at one given time.
And that's also a light bulb moment. I swear that's when most people say, no wonder the Social Security Fund is having some
running
issues
out of money.
there. Yeah, because so many people are taking off of one record, and obviously that's a different debate. But that's true. Okay, so if you have had multiple marriages, it's important to understand what those marriages were. How long did they last? Are they still alive? We'll get into survivor benefits in a minute, and we'll talk about why that is important. Before we talk survivor benefits, is there anything else with regard to divorced spousal benefits that we need to cover?
Yeah, one last thing, and that would be if you're currently receiving a divorced spousal benefit off of an ex-spouse and you choose to get remarried, you need to understand that your the benefit you're receiving off that ex-spouse is going to stop. Now, you can start claiming it off the new spouse, but it's going to be based on their work record. So just something to be aware of.
Or you might hop onto your own benefit.
Yeah.
But if you were on a divorced spousal benefit, that's because it was most likely greater than your own benefit. So your own benefit might be here. Hopefully the new spouse has a reasonable PIA as well.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Okay, some of these things are different. That topic you just mentioned can be different with survivor benefits. So let's get into survivor benefits in particular. With survivor benefits, the survivor is eligible for 100% of the primary worker's amount, not just 50% like a spousal benefit.
And one step further, it's not of PIA anymore, right?
It's like the one area that it's not a calculation of PIA.
Exactly. Yeah, it's based on what what the deceased individual was receiving, right? So we want to, and this goes back to strategizing, because we want to be very careful about when that primary breadwinner files, because it could permanently impact their surviving spouse for the rest of their life.
For good or for bad.
For good or for bad, yeah.
You could be waiting and getting 132% or 124% of PIA, and then the survivor gets to pick up that entire benefit. Or you could have gotten 70% of PIA, and the survivor is stuck with 70% of their PIA for the rest. So yes, this is the one area where it's not on the PIA, which is super important. With survivor benefits as well, there's strategy here, because a survivor benefit can take a benefit as early as 60 instead of 62. And that's different. Your own benefit, the age range is 62 to 70. But for a survivor benefit, you have 60 until whenever you decide to start.
Right.
And it stops growing at full retirement age. So the band is really 60 to probably 67 for most people for their full retirement age. So you've got these two different bands that somewhat, they overlap a bit. And I'm jumping to the end in mind here for a minute, and then we'll cover all the rules. But the bottom line is, for most people who have a benefit of their own or a survivor benefit, they either should be looking at taking their own at 62, letting the survivor benefit climb until full retirement age, and then they switch to their full retirement age survivor benefit at 67. So that's strategy one. Strategy two would be the exact opposite, where they take the survivor benefit at 60, and for a decade they pick that up and wait on their own all the way until 70, and then they switch to their own benefit, maybe up to 124 to 132%. So that's the bottom line on survivor benefits. Now, there are times when we're throwing in a spousal benefit as well, where you are looking at, well, I could do this survivor and then my own, or my own and then survivor, or I could do the survivor and then a spousal because I'm remarried. Talk to us about the remarry rule, though, because if you get remarried too early, it can take away survivor benefits.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, let's pretend that you have a spouse that you were married to, and that spouse has passed away early on in your life, and then you get remarried. If that remarriage is happening prior to age 60, you are no longer eligible to receive survivor benefits off of the first spouse that had passed away. We actually had this situation happen. We had a client who husband passed away early on in their marriage. She's about to get remarried. She's 59 and some change, almost 60. She's got the wedding invitations out. And we sat her down and we said, listen, if you go through with this wedding before age 60, you're forever going to be precluded from receiving the survivor benefit off that very first husband that you were married to. Long story short, she sent out new invitations, right? Postponed that wedding a few months to ensure that now she would be entitled to either a spousal benefit off of the new husband or a survivor benefit off of the very first husband that had passed away.
Or her own benefit, which was item 3.
That's item 3.
Yeah. Very good. Smart. She had no idea. I mean, who does? Right. Who knows that
Nobody knows that
age 60 matters with regard to marriage and survivor benefits?
And nor will the Social Security reach out to you and say, hey, warning, just so you know, you're about to forego or give away all of these benefits, right?
Because she didn't send them her announcement. It's true, though. Yeah, and they're not going to tell you. And generally, the Social Security Administration is not designed to take on the risk of being wrong. They're not going to give you much advice, because they can't really put themselves in a position to be right or wrong or take that risk and put themselves out on a limb like that. So I would just generally try to understand this yourself or talk to advisors, and we can help you through it.
Two things I'll add real quick to that, Zacc. I think it's important to understand that there are no delayed credits on any benefit except for your own, right? And you said that, but the only benefit that you can ever get delayed credits on is your own benefit, right? A spousal benefit, a divorced spousal, a survivor, a divorce survivor, those do not have delayed credits. In other words, if you delay those beyond your full retirement age, they're not going to grow any further than what you're entitled to at your full retirement age. The second thing that I would add is full retirement age for survivor benefits is different than your own personal full retirement age. This isn't like a dramatic issue, right? It's not a big deal, but it's something to be aware of, that you can actually claim survivor benefits a little bit earlier. It's about 4 months earlier than your own full retirement age. If your own full retirement age is 67, your full retirement age in the eyes of Social Security for your survivor benefits is actually 66 and 8 months. So just be aware, you can be getting that survivor slightly earlier than your own personal full retirement age.
Got it. And some of these benefits we can backdate a little bit, or go back and try to backdate an application.
Yes.
Some of them we can't. So the earlier you plan and the earlier you understand these rules, the more likely it is that you will hit the right time frame that Tyler's talking about here around when you should be filing and when you're eligible for different benefits. Let's go through some rules with survivor benefits, because it seems to be a little more tricky than just your standard Social Security benefit. So the couple must have been married for at least 9 months at the date of death. Of course, except for an accident. They have exceptions there. And you mentioned earlier the Social Security Administration does a good job of finding people who try to sneak around the system. So you can't marry some rich person on their deathbed and pick up a big Social Security benefit. You got to last at least 9 months.
It depends how good of a nurturer you are.
Yeah, I guess so. So the survivor, we talked about the 60 years old to at least be able to file. That's 50 if you're disabled.
Yep.
And then that will be reduced up to your full retirement age for the full benefit, whatever that was for the spouse who has passed away, not their PIA. As a clarification, you already hit that as well. And if they get remarried before 60. Now, I'm going to bring something up that it's weird, and we're not advising anything in particular, but we've seen it, so we just have to disclose. So someone who has gotten married before 60, technically you can get divorced and then get remarried to the same person, and your most recent marriage has happened after 60. And we've seen this. We've actually seen people go through with it. We've seen the application process and seen it work. So it's weird, but we calculated it with one gal that it was about $650,000 of additional Social Security income over her lifetime if she and her husband were on board with that process.
Yeah, I actually, we did this for a client. This woman was married early on and her husband passed away. She then gets remarried in her 40s. Well, now, I'm meeting with her and she's 66 and I'm asking about, your current marital situation and what about in the past? Have you ever been married in the past? And she explains to me that, yes, I was married early on and he passed away while we were married. And by the way, if you're married to someone and they pass while you're married, they only have to have been married for 9 months, not the whole 10-year rule.
You don't need the 10 years there.
So,
but if you are divorced from the person upon their passing, then the marriage needs to have lasted for 10 years.
10 years, you got it. But if you're actively married, you only have to have been married for 9 months. So I explained to this woman, I said, listen, you got remarried before 60, so you're no longer entitled to survivor benefits off of that first husband. And then explained if by chance you were to get a divorce and get quickly remarried, that new marriage is happening.
We're not going to tell you to whom.
Yeah, that's right. This is your chance to get out if you don't like the current marriage, right? But we explained that, divorce, remarry, and now it's technically happening after the age of 60. So she was able to pick up $2,000 in a survivor benefit from her first husband that had passed away. In the meantime, her own personal benefit is getting delayed credits. She's recently turned 70. So for 4 years, she got $2,000 a month.
I can't
What is
believe
that,
this
96?
4 years ago. I remember this. Yeah.
I think that's $96,000 or $98,000, whatever. So she got that for those 4 years, and now she's switched over to her own benefit. Her own benefit is now $3,600
Wow.
per month. I didn't run that through a financial calculator, but the amount of extra money that created for that household it's a lot.
And there's a little bit of a break even because she has to get the higher benefit later, but still, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Okay, so survivor benefits, and just to put a bow on that, we're not marriage counselors. We're not telling you what to do with your marriage. We just know that this has worked. Your call. It is on the edge with Social Security. This isn't advice. This is especially not advice on marriage.
Right.
But anyway, this is your call. You work through it. But the primary understanding is that if you are remarried before 60, it takes away the ability to pick up a survivor benefit.
Correct.
Now, if you have been divorced, this is also weird because you don't necessarily have to keep track of your ex. And I know especially at this age, a lot of people don't have as much communication with their ex-spouses because the kids have moved out. They don't need to as much. But you need to know if they're still alive.
Yeah.
Because it changes the benefit dramatically. If you are eligible for an ex-spouse, just spousal benefit, then it might be half of their benefit.
The max is half, yeah.
Right. And now if that spouse waited for a while and then they pass away, it might go from 50% of their PIA to 120-something% of their PIA. So it could be the difference between $1,000 and $2,500 a month if you can just keep track of if that person is still alive.
Yeah.
Again, not advising that you wish ill on anyone either, but just keep track of if you're willing and able of your ex-spouse's mortality if they're still alive. Okay, talking about survivor benefits, it is important to understand the long-term effect of your filing decision on survivor benefits. If you file early, thinking we have an example of a couple at 62, he filed as early as possible thinking, I'm going to get as much as I can out of the government. And he was not in the best of health. And so the idea was, I might pass away. I'm going to get as much as I can. Gets a couple months worth of Social Security benefits, passes away. At first glance, you might think he won.
Yeah.
He did it. He got benefits before they were gone. The problem is that his wife lived into her 90s, late 90s. So that's more than 30 years of her getting a reduced survivor benefit when she could have potentially been able to get more than 100% of his benefit, and maybe she had her own benefit picked up that in the meantime. So there's a lot of strategy there when it comes to survivor benefits. Just be very cautious of how you file.
Yeah.
What else? Is there anything else to add before we wrap up?
Well,
here?
just to on that point, you said last episode, it's a team sport, and it really needs to be, right? It's not just about your life. A similar situation, we had a client that our plan for him was to delay until 70. Well, he came to us in his later 60s and said, I was just diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and he was given less than 12 months to live. And so what he was telling us was, I'm ready to file. I need to get on this before I pass away within the next 12 months. Let me at least get something out of this benefit, right? And our answer to him was, no, don't do anything. You're married, your spouse is in great health, and she's going to live long beyond your death. And so he followed our advice. He didn't file. He did end up passing away that year, but forever his wife will be benefited by a larger benefit because he continued to delay that benefit. So it is a team sport. It's not just about you. If you're in bad health, think about who you might be leaving this benefit to.
Yeah, and that's not easy. Those are not easy conversations, easy decisions between spouses. Sometimes it can be hard, especially if you run your finances separate.
Yeah.
There are times when we just have to say, okay, mathematically as a whole, you're better if you do this, but you guys run your cash flow so differently that we might need to sacrifice the math in order to accommodate reality of your life. So that's part of it as well. Okay, so this is Social Security, survivor, divorce, remarriage. There's a lot here. If any of this seems like, okay, this is me, but I don't think I understand exactly what my options are, give us a call. Let us sit down probably within 15 to 30 minutes of talking to you. We're going to understand what benefits are available to you. So the bottom line is your first decision is, or your first analysis is, what is on my personal Social Security menu? Do I have survivor, spousal, my own benefit, an ex-spouse? You got to list out your menu And then what is on my menu early, at full retirement, and late? And are there any benefits that I can start and let another one grow? Some of them coordinate like that, some don't. So that's where we can sit down together with you and help you understand all of that. We're really glad you're here on this Social Security season with us. And the previous seasons, we talked about income planning in season 1, Roth, all about that Roth in season 2. This is all about Social Security in season 3, and we'll keep it coming to you. Join us here, subscribe, and follow on the Zacc Money Education channel.